There you go. Well done.
All right, folks, for those who are joining us, we will begin the webinar in 3 minutes, right at 1 p.m. Thank you for joining us today. Hello, the program will begin in 2 minutes. Good afternoon, and welcome to MiHUB Monday. And hopefully everyone is here and ready for our MiHUB session. Today, we will be focused on the Biden infrastructure bill and what's in it for you. My name is Scott Phillips, and I'm the director of the Mid-Atlantic Minority Business Development Agency's Advanced Manufacturing Center, which is located in Baltimore. This is an exciting day to talk about opportunities focused for African-American and other minority businesses in the Mid-Atlantic region. And today we have wonderful guests, Mr. Chris Ward, who you'll hear more about, and Kenneth Canty. The MiHUB Monday is a product of the Minority Innovation Hub, which was started here in Baltimore, and is actually one of our consultants who is bringing this vision of a cooperative for minority manufacturers to life. And that individual is Mark Lawrence. And so before we get started with our panel today and discussing MiHUB Monday and infrastructure, I'd like to give Mark an opportunity to talk more about the MiHUB co-op.
Thanks, Scott. Thank you for everyone out there. So as Scott said, my name is Mark Lawrence. And when we came up with the idea of the co-op, the Manufacturing Innovation Hub co-op, we wanted to create a platform that provided access, education, and opportunities, in addition to shared infrastructure to increase the success of minority manufacturers in the advanced manufacturing industry. And when we looked around at applicable business models, we thought that the cooperative made sense because really when you think about a cooperative, It's an autonomous association of purpose that unite voluntary to meet a common goal. And this common goal was to increase manufacturing. And even though we use the word manufacturing and innovation, we want to make sure that it's available to all of the manufacturing industry clusters, such as transportation, fast-moving consumer goods, medical, biomedical, paper, printing, textiles, fashion, and household goods. So we want to create a place and a platform for everyone. The value proposition there was really to help the members who contribute to grow together to deliver economic and social benefit directly in the communities where they're established. And what we would like to say is that the vision and the value proposition of the co-op is to increase the connection of these minority manufacturers to the national manufacturing infrastructure and a lot of the opportunities that you'll hear about when we talk more about the infrastructure bill. So the goal is, and I'll talk a little bit about the services in a second, really to focus on these minority manufacturers, ones that are past the startup phase, but are looking to grow at a sustainable scale. And we aim to provide expertise in specific manufacturing subsectors, actual space, industry-specific support services, access to equipment, shared administrative back office support, and then business-to-business opportunities with large manufacturing firms. So how do we do that? We do that with two primary services: turnkey product design, prototyping, and scalable production. That's delivered by one of our partners, Harbor Designs, which is really engineering, prototyping, contract manufacturing, and technology scouting and commercialization. And then your traditional industry-specific capacity building and business development services, right? So giving access to new markets, access to contracts, access to capital, and business development. So there's different membership levels. So just, we kicked off, we had our first shareholder member meeting a couple weeks ago. So thank you for all the shareholder members that joined and leaned in very early. That'll be the governing body for the co-op. We're going to have general members, and students, faculty, as affiliate members as well, service providers, people that want to provide services to the co-op and to the members, and then sponsors. So that's an overview of the co-op. We're excited to bring this opportunity to you. We've been up and operating even through the pandemic, but we believe that this platform is very scalable and very applicable, and you'll hear more about it today. But if you want more information, feel free to go to www.mihub, MIHUB, co-op, all one word, COOP.com. And the email is info@mihubcoop.com. Scott, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Mark. This is a wonderful opportunity. If you're a manufacturer, happen to be a minority manufacturer, please reach out to Mark and our team to learn more and to get engaged. Together, we are better, and bringing groups of people together to work together with a objective of growing business is what the MiHUB Co-op seeks to do. So we're excited about that. So today, we're talking about the infrastructure bill, and we thought that before we got started in this general conversation, we would highlight one of our firms that is actively engaged in infrastructure-related projects. And that firm is led by Kenneth Canty, the president and CEO of Janus Resilient Infrastructure Demolition, Atlantic Merdian Contracting Corp, and Freeland Construction Company. Ken, who is a native of Boston, grew up in Boston, attended the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, and received his Bachelor of Science degree in Civil Engineering, and also received his professional engineering status in South Carolina in 2008. During and after college, Ken worked at a number of engineering firms, but got very much involved in some major projects that we are familiar with, one of which is referred to as the Big Dig, the Central Artery Tunnel Project in Boston, Massachusetts. He moved to South Carolina and worked for Flatiron Structures Company. And then Ken began expanding his own businesses. I shouldn't say business, but businesses, as I mentioned. Ken has been able to grow and expand those businesses in infrastructure and engineering space. He currently has offices in Boston, Charleston, Savannah, and Bulgaria. Ken is he's married, He's brought his family along in everything that he does, and he's currently residing in South Carolina. When he's not working, he's doing community service as a member of the board of directors of the Boa Fair in Charleston, South Carolina. Ken is a client of the MBDA Advanced Manufacturing Center. And I want to give Ken an opportunity just to talk about his experience, particularly in this engineering world, and some unique things that he does in terms of building products and reuse of building materials to create structures. So Ken, I want to welcome you to the session today.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me. So just to tell you a little bit more and expound upon what my colleague Scott was saying, first, I'm very thankful of the MBDA and what you all have done in the past. And I would be remiss to say the success of my businesses in the past, present, and now future, the MBDA has always been a big part of. And I think it's really an underutilized resource that people don't use enough, particularly minority businesses. So Janus Materials, the company that you've currently spotlighted, really came out of a concept and an idea of how to make more space and get rid of stuff on a particular project I had. And that project was the demolition of the Wando Bridge in Mount Pleasant here in Charleston, South Carolina. We had a very constrained site. We didn't really have any budget to take it to the landfill. And we were really thinking about what we were going to do with the material. And all of a sudden, I get a call, and someone says, "There's a farmer for you at the office." And I thought that was a weird way to introduce somebody. So I said, "Sure, I will love to go see him." So I went up to the general contractor's office, and a gentleman by the name of Harvey said, "Hey, I see the way you're cutting those bridge slabs, and it reminded me of something I did 20 years ago when a certain project was being built. And it really helped me stabilize my land so I could get my equipment back into certain places. And then I could take it out so I didn't have to get permitting for it." So I ended up actually selling him the bridge slabs that we were saw cutting, and I would saw cut it in a certain way so that it would fit in his truck and he'd be able to take it with the equipment he had. And he saved a lot of money. Instead of building bridges and building access, he was able to use what the bridge offered. And then we said, what else could we do with it? So at the same time, we were already coming with an idea to take apart the 176-ton truss and use it as a fisheries magnet, a large game fishing magnet. And we engineered the pick in such a way that we lifted the whole section up with one crane, put it on a barge, and then it was sunk out to sea by Stevens Towing. So they say if you build it, they will come. And I say if you demolish it and you have an open mind, they'll come and they'll want the material you have, and you can actually make profit off of it. So we started looking at all of our projects, and particularly the bridges, almost as like organ donor programs. And what we started to do was look at a bridge a year ahead of time, 2 or 3 years ahead of time, and say, what could the components of that bridge be used for in another life? And from there, we came up with a process that we coined, taking the potential of energy of a structure, and everybody remembers just physics. There's potential energy. There's what you might call real energy that's actually, exerted. And then you have what I called environmental kinetic energy. And that environmental kinetic energy was that these bridges actually contained, because of the way they were weathered and because of the concrete that was used, they were actually very attractive to marine life and oysters. And no one had really, not that they had never put it together, but they never looked at the whole ecosystem or the whole supply chain that the bridge could actually be used. And since it had already been paid for when it was built and you were being paid to demolish it, you could repurpose these materials for a future life to combat climate change and to enhance habitat that had been destroyed by climate change and in whatever form climate change was coming in. So we look at every single demo job, and we may do it through AMC Civil. Freeland certainly was doing it. And we take apart the job in a way that it can be transported and reused. And then the last step was we actually developed a marketplace like Amazon and started selling the portions of the bridge before the bridge would get taken down, so that when we took it down, we knew exactly where it was going. So that in a nutshell is the overview of the company. You know, the successes and the challenges we have, success and challenge are like brother and sister, they go hand in hand. And the procurement side, and I can't overstate this enough, a lot of people don't start in the federal space because it seems to be very daunting, so let's start somewhere else. Well, I started in the federal space, and I found the federal space to be very process oriented because of the regulations, and then thus it had a level of fairness to it if you knew how to follow the rules. And transitioning, that was where the success was. We you know, before Janus, with some of the former companies, we executed well over 450 contracts for the federal government, and the vast majority of them were excellent. The challenge, though, comes into when you're coming out of that federal space and you've developed an exit strategy and you've developed who you want to be, as they say, when you grow up. The fact is maybe not everybody's sophisticated as the federal government and how they do things. And that challenge coming out of the federal government, you lose a little bit of your protection that the federal government, the 8A program provides you almost cover. And in the heavy civil space, what I realized, and to be honest with you, I didn't realize it in the beginning, there weren't many minority companies doing what I was doing, if not any, and there certainly weren't any Black companies doing it. And I would always consider that a novelty, but little did I know how unique that actually was and some of the challenges that I would come into. And one of them is simple as the cost it takes to do some of these things. Heavy civil is very cost intensive. And one of our biggest challenges being able to self-perform with our own equipment. We've been able to self-perform, but we haven't been able to get our own equipment, even though we can operate it perfectly fine. So developing those relationships with the folks who have it so that you can use it is key. And there's not many people who have these, what we call them big toys or yellow iron, who have these things. I was excited to see Mr. Mark Lawrence when he talked about equipment and procuring equipment and this and that and the other. That is, in the infrastructure business, I think that's something that should be looked at, and that's key, because that is one of the biggest challenges, is getting your hands on equipment where you don't have to rent it, you can own it, and therefore be more profitable. So Scott, with that, I'll stop and see where you want me to take this.
No, well, that was great, right? Just giving your experience, particularly your conversation about federal government and contracting with the federal government. I know you've had some challenges associated with that as well. Do you want to comment on those, to give people specifically those things that will give people an insight on some of the challenges that they may face, and the whole concept of advocacy in support of minority business? I want people to understand that there are organizations like MBDA around for a reason, right? And I think you've had an experience that might incite and enlighten.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the interest of time and other things, I won't necessarily get into the details of them, just
Understood.
because I could sit here all time and talk about this. But I will tell you that the country is changing, maybe it's not changing fast enough, but certain aspects have changed way quicker than other aspects. And the heavy civil business still has a lot of work to do. But it has a lot of work to do because it goes back all the way to the colleges and in the STEM programs. And that's why I spend, in terms of advocacy, I make sure I spend a lot of time with our young people at our schools, speaking to them about getting into the business. And a lot of these kids, there's a key word they talk about. How do you be a boss? I want to be a boss, right? You hear these young kids say that. And I'm able to connect them in a way is, you want to be a boss, you want to be a boss, you want to do this and do that. Here's how you do it. Get a civil engineering degree or in construction. Be a strong man or a woman. Stand your ground. People will do what they do, but I have found the majority of the people are good people. They just usually stay quiet. You have got to go into these situations and these jobs with allies. And you just mentioned MBDA. I mean, I've been a member. I became familiar with MBDA in 2008 when I thought I was getting stonewalled by the SBA for getting into the program because they didn't think I really had all the qualifications, even though they were all on paper. So MBDA, Ms. Diane Sumter, shout out to Diane Sumter in South Carolina, was really able to assist me and get me connected with attorney Ralph Thomas. And that really opened my eyes because I thought the whole civil rights movement didn't go into economics. They don't teach that in school, but it literally transitioned. When you hear names, these names that you don't hear, Abe Venerable. I know you guys know who that is.
I know Abe Venerable very well.
Yeah. And I actually was at Tuck School of Business with his son, Stephen. These advocacy programs are so crucial to opening your eyes to what's lying right beneath the surface and how to navigate it right beneath the surface. You got to be strong and you got to advocate for yourself, but you also have to have allies and friends who can advocate for you. Healthy relationships with MBDA, healthy relationships with your congressional people. They're there to help you. People think they're just there to do what they think they do. They're there to help you. And if you go speak to them, and this is even before any of the challenges, is one of the reasons we got so many contracts with Freeland was we spent a lot of time on the Hill talking to the Senate Appropriations Committee. We weren't learning anything nobody else didn't know. Nobody else would go there and ask. So we would go through the forms. They would show us, here's where we're spending the money. And they were like, look, the fact you came up here, of course we're going to tell you. It's your money. It's your money to so we're going to tell you. So we would use that as business development. So the advocacy, those agencies like MBDA and others are crucial. They're crucial. And I will tell you that I probably would have been taken out a long time ago because business, as Mayor Big Otis said in Savannah, capitalism is a blood sport. And business is, and then I added in heavy civil construction is Mortal Kombat. Well, those agencies like MBDA, like others, aspects of the SBA are there for a reason. And remember why the principles and why those organizations were founded and go forward from there. I highly encourage that.
Well, Ken, that last comment is a great segue to our next guest and our panelist, Mr. Chris Ward. And the reason I say that is because in November, President Biden signed the infrastructure bill, which was to put $1 trillion into infrastructure projects across this nation. And if there's anybody that understands infrastructure, it is Chris Ward. Chris is a consultant and most recently served as Senior Vice President and Chief Executive of the metro area for AECOM, one of the world's largest infrastructure engineering firms. He previously served as the Executive Director of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey from 2008 to 2011. So he understands the government side of things. He was the president of the Port Authority's wholly owned entities, the Port Authority Trans-Hudson Corporation, the Newark Legal and Communications Center, Urban Renewal Corporation, and the New York and New Jersey Railroad Corporation. His previous positions at the Port Authority include Chief of Planning and External Affairs, as well as Director of Port Development. Before that, Chris spent much of his professional career with the City of New York in various capacities, including as Senior Vice President for Transportation and Commerce at the Economic Development Corporation, Assistant Commissioner of the Department of Telecommunications and Energy, and Director of Research and Development at the Department of Consumer Affairs. Chris has done a lot. Today, Chris is actually with Bravo Engineering, a minority-owned firm, talent, skills, abilities, and he's joining us in focusing on development of minority businesses. So I want to welcome Chris Ward to MiHUB Monday and let him share a little bit more about his background and his work in this area. But Chris, I really want you to focus on your perspective of this $1 trillion that's coming into the hands of municipalities, states all over this country, and how we go about accessing those.
Great. Thank you, Scott. And thanks to my good friend, Ken Canty. And thank you, Mark, for that introduction to your co-op concept. I think it's the first I've heard of it. And I really like the co-op concept for building on a platform to leverage value and leverage market positions to increase capacity. So look forward to following up on that. And Ken, look forward to seeing you again. And thank you, Scott, for bringing us all together. I'd like to start actually and build on a few things Ken said. Imagine the United States has now announced that we have $1 trillion infrastructure bill, but we barely made it. President Biden, after the years of the challenges we face, infrastructure that you think Republicans and Democrats can all agree on, we barely made it. The second half of the social bill didn't make it. So while I'm a huge supporter and extremely pleased that President Biden and his team were able to get this, there's still a tremendous amount of work that needs to be done for this country to put itself on a level of equality, a level of opportunity, and a level of economic prosperity that is not found only in the top of certain ladders. So it's a great start, but I want to take a couple of things that Ken has said because they're very important. One of the things is teams and allies, because if we remember back when President Obama started his infrastructure initiative, the watchword by everybody was shovel-ready projects. Now that sounds good because it's like we're going to get economic impetus right into the ground quickly. But to me, the history of shovel-ready projects is those who are already there are shovel-ready. We're not bringing new entrants into the infrastructure market if all we're focusing on things that have already been, funded, permitted, has gotten the necessary regulatory approval, that the teams have been, selected or they've been at least poised. That is taking what is already there and just building and investing on an economy that's already mature. That is not the minority business's challenge. Our challenge is to actually grow it with the $1 trillion which is coming, because I think President Biden is in his need to, President Obama in his need to have that economic stimulus early, did not get the full value of his infrastructure program. And I think there's some very important lessons learned there. We should all be wary of shovel-ready projects because they often go to incumbents or they go to established contractors who know how to do business. Ken mentioned allies, and I think particularly for the minority business community, as we look to the work that's coming out of this program, is that allies become key. And they're not just Ken's allies, which is organizations, that we're talking about today, or even elected officials. It's strategic allies within the minority community, focusing on where the new large work is coming, what are the unique assets within the minority contracting community, within African-American owned businesses that can partner and make a market share within the coming work that makes them the player that has to be dealt with. And I often worry, and I think I've said this with Tony Robinson and a couple of other people, that when minority businesses end up fighting singularly, they lose the value of partnership and they lose the value of market share, candidly, and I'm going to be brutally honest here, to push out incumbents. Whoever was the blood sport capitalist, the mayor of Savannah, this is a competitive world, and we are trying to bring in people who have been denied opportunity into a market that was structured in many ways to deny them that opportunity. So allies from both congressional leadership, Senate leadership, absolutely critical. Ken has demonstrated that. Allies in terms of organizations such as Mark's and Scott's, critical. But when you look at work that's coming, and I'll come to that in a minute, I would really emphasize strategic alliances among minority contractors to create a market share position, which is undeniable in terms of its competitiveness. The last and one of the hardest things that Ken also highlighted, and it is a form of unbelievable frustration, I think, for all of us, that we cannot optimistically expect the bureaucracy of either the federal government or state and local governments to suddenly miraculously go, we can get $1 trillion out into the economy in 6 months away and empower companies that have never been empowered before. That is not going to happen. We will continue, as Ken made clear, the federal procurement process. If it's a federal project, it'll be pursuant to federal guidelines. If it's in New York and New Jersey and money coming from the Biden administration, it's going to flow down through the states. So you're going to still have to deal with certification at the state level. You're going to have to deal with certification on the local level, or here in this region with the Port Authority. And that in and of itself, getting ready for the distribution of the infrastructure programs, identifying where it's going into your community. If you're in the mid-Atlantic, great, focus on what are those projects, and then ensure, as Ken made clear, that all of your paperwork and all of that, bureaucracy to be eligible has been as tight as it can possibly be, because that's where so many small firms, emerging firms, just do not have that breadth of expertise to dot every T and cross every I, and then you get tripped up. Oh, you're not eligible here, but you're eligible there. Let's not be naive and think that simply because Joe Biden, to his enormous credit, got us $1 trillion, that the world has turned into rainbows and unicorns on how contracting gets distributed at the local level. But on the local level, I think this again where we can bring the circle all the way back around. And I think about the big project in my area in New York and New Jersey, which is the new Amtrak tunnels. This is a $30 billion project, which is transformative, both in terms of the future and then reparative, I don't think that's a word, for all of the destruction that occurred when we lost the tunnels due to Sandy. And that $30 billion worth of work is so large, it's virtually like the Rock of Gibraltar. And until you can begin to disaggregate it and understand, just as Ken did, is where's my strength as a demolition company? Where are the assets that my company can leverage to make a profit? I think we all need to really focus on the $30 billion, not as one big project, but rather projects that meet the market for the minority businesses that we have been promoting and encouraging and enabling and creating capacity and power, finding those within the $30 billion. So for example, there, in all likelihood, an African-American firm is not going to be bringing a $30 million tunnel boring machine and will be in charge of tunnel boring. On the other hand, the ancillary work around that, whether it's trucking, site preparation, A&E work, disaggregating those big projects to meaningful strategic teams is a way to break into that kind of opportunity. Because it's not just going to be manna from heaven that flows down from the federal government, and $1 trillion is going to be evenly distributed amongst firms that have been competing. There are going to be a lot of other firms that have been doing this for a long time that want a lot more of their share than they had before. And that means strategic alliances, taking real care, and it's a pain and it's difficult. And it's frustrating, as Scott was saying earlier, about just getting through the process. But if you're not through it, you can't compete. So my bottom line is this. We should be optimistic, but we should not be unrealistic. This money is going to flow. It's going to come through our states into the local communities. It's going to be pursuant to existing regulations. It's going to be large amounts of money that hopefully are not shovel-ready projects that we can all look at and disaggregate and find meaningful places to bring teams together, create market share, and use that market share and power to push out other competitors and ensure this community is moving to the top of the $1 trillion and not, unfortunately, and we worked so hard to help President Obama with his initiative, and he was thwarted time and time again in project allowances because it was always under this shovel-ready moniker that somehow that meant we were getting it out faster. Well, I'm a bit of a cynic, and I think that was just a way to make sure that people who have been successful before remain successful. And I think the challenge for us, and I'm delighted to be a part of this group to talk about it, is how do we take that $1 trillion and make it real to a company in South Carolina that is trying to build bridges to communities and repairing the environmental damage we've done to this planet to bring all of the infrastructure, whether it's housing, all of it, to really bring it to bear. And I think we need to be realistic. We can be optimistic, but if done right, I think President Biden's $1 trillion infrastructure bill can build a foundation for even the social infrastructure bill that he wasn't able to get. I spoke too long, Scott, but that's my take on it today.
Hey, Chris, very insightful. And I'm going to ask you a question because as you were talking, I'm sitting here thinking, where do we go in the advocacy community and where do the individual business owners go, whether they're in New York, they're in Baltimore, they're in Texas, they're in California, to number one, get the information they need about the projects that may be coming out, and that number two, to be those advocates for themselves and their peers. So if you're starting in New York, am I going to, sit on the mayor's door? Am I going to sit on my congressman's door? Am I working through SBA? What are your thoughts about the most effective ways to kind of press the powers that be to make sure that our business owners have the information they need?
Good question, Scott. I think first off, you got to be smart and strategic for your company to look at the work that's coming. Stay close to the agencies which are going to be letting that work, but then most importantly, the strategy has to be with elected officials to the extent that the federal minority thresholds, to their credit, are so high that it's very, very difficult to meet those goals. And until you've got people like Congressman Owens, or you've got people that know exactly who's out there who might get to 36% in terms of federal participation, so you can literally have the conversation like, I'm not getting this work. This work was let. I'm certified. I bid, and here's why I didn't get it, and here's who got it. That's what we need to really, I think Ken said it great. That's what we really need to educate locally engaged Congress people for the failure to deliver to the 36% of federal minority requirements, because that threshold is great, but it's high, and they use it as a way to say we can't make it. So I think identifying where the opportunity is, ensuring that we have the right team and the right capacity, that it's met all the regulatory requirements, and then highlighting to local elected officials, I'm in this game, and if I don't win in this game, there's something wrong with this game because I've done everything I'm supposed to do.
Tell me, because you've had big company experience, you've had, quasi-government experience, right? And now you're in a smaller firm, right? A minority-owned firm. The perspectives from those three, right? When you were sitting at the Port Authority, if you knew you were getting $1 billion of this $1 trillion, what would your perspective be? If you were sitting in the hallowed halls of AECOM, and the way you'd be thinking about it there, what would your perspective be? And I think I now hear your perspective working at Bravo. So give me those other two.
Sure. Well, I'll tell you that this has been a source of, and there's some good friends who are on this call. I'll be honest. I'm a white man in the United States of America, and I've been very, very blessed and very lucky, and have had some incredible careers. I was executive director of the Port Authority, and I was Bloomberg's commissioner of the water sewer system. And I like to think that I have been attentive and thoughtful on this issue for minority business opportunity. And I will tell you that sitting atop of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, even as, and I will state, the man, Rick Cotton, who's currently head of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, will state explicitly that he is committed more than any other executive director to hit the targets for whether it's the Port Authority or federal government. But that's the point, that it's not what Rick Cotton says. In some ways, it's not what Chris Ward would say, because I would give some really lovely speeches and I would try to bore down into the contracting process at the Port Authority. It is a never-ending struggle. It is something that the world was not built this way. It wasn't structured for these sorts of opportunities. Construction, heavy construction is not a place where a lot of people think there's big money to be made or easy opportunity to be made. So for the Port Authority, it was very frustrating to me. I had a wonderful team of committed individuals to increase minority capacity. Was I a success at it? No, I wasn't. We never got to the level that we want. So to me, best intentions, there are a lot of best intentions, but it's really understanding that granular aspect of where things happen and who makes decisions and where they get done. So that's my perspective on the Port Authority, which only goes back to Ken's point, which is you got to stand strong, you got to be forceful, you got to have friends, you got a team, and you got to let elected officials, when it doesn't occur, they need to know. So that's one. The last one is, I think, and is to end optimistically here, because I'm worried that I'm a little too pessimistic here, Scott. To end optimistically, the thing in working with Bravo, we're only about 60 to 75, we're an A&E firm. Where we do best is when we find those partnerships, when we end up extrapolating our value across horizontally to other companies. And that creates excitement and opportunity. I think we probably have the most varied workforce in New York City in terms of backgrounds, ethnicity, race, et cetera. But with that, we've expanded out in partnerships with other companies. And that's exciting because, the big companies like AECOM, they win because they're big. General Motors was General Motors for all those years because they were General Motors. But in some ways, they're not really delivering the way small minority firms, African-American firms really can deliver for the community. They're too big for that. And they'll go out and find some minority contractors to bring into a team and talk about, well, we can get to 30%. When that job's over, in large respect, that relationship probably is over as well. So it's, I like small, I like strategic, I like partnerships. I like what Mark was saying about the way a co-op of people with a common set of interests, not necessarily they all have the same economic interests, but a common set of interests to create an advocacy and bidding block to push ourselves into that space in spite of the barriers and in spite of people like myself talking the talk. We got to get in there and make it real.
Wow, Chris, I think your insight has been great. I want to bring Ken back on if he can join us. Sure. And Ken, you've been listening to this conversation, and I'm sure you've got some thoughts that have come out of the conversation. I also want to invite our attendees, if they'd like to put a question in the Q&A or send a note in the chat, feel free to do so. I'll be looking at those and kind of raising a few questions before we end our session today. But Ken, what are your thoughts on all of this? Hold on a second. I'm going to try to add you in there. How are you, man? So what are your thoughts?
I was, Chris, I was listening to your presentation and I forgot that I was a panelist. I thought I was in the audience because I was taking some serious notes.
Thanks, Ken.
Yeah, I'll say this. Chris hit on something about all this work coming out, and I want to expound upon that. There's the amount of work that's coming out is actually, most people can't even conceive of what it actually is. We are rebuilding the entire country, and it's long overdue. And we're doing it all in a relatively short amount of time frame. We're doing what we did in 150 or 200 years, and we're reconstructing it, all that infrastructure. That being said, when I was on the big dig, it ended up being $15 billion, and people would hem and haw about $15 billion. And we did a lot of work over 20 years, a lot of work, and several generations of people worked on that project. Well, that was a drop in the bucket for what's about to happen. The ARC tunnels, the tunnels going through the Hudson. If people knew how bad the infrastructure was in this country, they would think a little bit differently. How bad it actually, how desperately we need to do it. And I'll add this: people always talk about national security issues, and this infrastructure certainly is a national security issue. But here's another dimension to it: the inclusion of minority businesses, Black businesses, Hispanic businesses, women businesses, disabled veteran businesses. Them not being included in this conversation and being excluded is what creates the national security issue, because you need these people to get this work done. There's simply not enough big companies and enough people that work for the big guys to get this work done. You need the smaller guys to come in who can be innovative, the guys who don't have to have 8 different people look at something administratively to make a decision. You need the big companies, yes, you need them for the muscle, you need them for certain things. But I think of the small companies, the big companies are like the big army, and the small companies are like Ranger Battalion or Force Recon or some kind of special forces. You need those companies who come in, who can move quick, get things done, and then go on to the next thing. Because that's what we're doing as entrepreneurs. We eat what we can, we hunt, and we kill. I think I would like to think people look at that as that, and then the racism and the discrimination can begin to be solved, because people start to realize that it's not economical to do it. It's foolish, but it's not economical. It's actually hurting the country because you can't get the infrastructure done because people are being excluded from the work.
So that's a good point. With all of this money coming in, Ken, you're absolutely right. I don't care how big you are, AECOM or any of these firms, they're not going to have enough people on their staffs to do the type of work that's coming at them. And so the question is, how do we build that capacity? We're having a lot of conversations all the way down to the high school level about getting younger people engaged and ready and prepared to participate in the trades, right? Which are going to impact our ability to get some of this work done. It's going to be a challenge. I mean, we've got workforce challenges today that are really significant. One of the questions that was asked by Cynthia Rumpf, and I appreciate her question, was, who's going to monitor this to make sure that MBEs are really utilized? And I'm assuming, Chris, we're going to have the standard monitoring services, but are they going to have the capacity to really monitor these projects?
Well, I can't believe I'm going to say this, having been in government. I think we need to, and Ken kind of said it, and I said it, I think the community needs to self-police and not rely on monitors, because monitors are in and of themselves part of the process for certification and the like. It's a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. I think with the leadership that's around the table, I think we need to almost independently monitor how well this money is in fact being spent, because there are a lot of, what did Satchel Paige says, there's lies, and statistics. And I worry about monitors and statistics, because by the time you get to them, I'm not sure we're getting the full picture. So I think one of the things that's great about this webinar is that we bring accountability down to the grassroots level and literally do the reporting independent of monitors. Because monitors have been monitoring for a while, and we have not seen capacity grow as much as we'd want to see. So I'd like to see some fairly strong independent monitoring of some of these big projects. I mean,
I like that.
One thing, Scott, think about what Ken told us. The city of Boston remade itself with the Big Dig project. Boston was a small parochial town until the Big Dig came. It's now a completely different city, which has opened up neighborhoods and opened up economic opportunity. We all got stuck with, oh, it was a boondoggle, it was way too expensive. It wasn't too expensive. It built what Boston needed, and there was some real opportunity was created there. Was there enough created there? By no means. But those kind of large transformative projects get down into the neighborhoods and down into the schools and down into opportunity in a way that other projects don't. So monitor the big ones and make sure the monitoring is independent so we know the numbers are real.
I like that. Hopefully Cynthia heard that one, because that sounds like a job for the MiHUB co-op folks to take on. And Cynthia has just been elected the president of the co-op. So I hope you got that one. I hope you got that one really clear, Cynthia. AM Forward program. Winston Fraser asks, are there any insights on the AM Forward program? I'm not familiar with the AM Forward program. Are either you guys familiar? AM builds on the work and advances key administrative goals, more resilient and innovative supply chains by investing in small and medium companies. I got to look that one up. That's the Advanced
AM Forward?
Yep, the Advanced Manufacturing Forward program, but I'm not familiar with it. So I'm going to have to, Winston Fraser, who's also one of our clients, has got me doing some homework. I'll work with him on that one. All right, I got another question for you guys, and it's really kind of talking about this workforce thing. How are you all doing right now? Both, Chris, you're in small business now in comparison to before, and Ken, you've always been a small business owner, entrepreneur. Workforce, this is becoming a real issue, and how does that going to impact your ability to take advantage of this infrastructure work?
Well, for me, what I'm doing, a lot of my work, I'm actually intentionally focusing to be more equipment intensive and having highly trained and thus highly paid specialists to do it. And I mean, I don't mean just the engineers sitting in the office, of which I am one, but the operators, the riggers, the transporters, making sure those people are the best qualified they can be and keeping those numbers small. Because as a friend of mine, my chief of staff said, the concrete and steel do what it tells you to do. The concrete and steel do what you tell it. It's the people. It's always about the people. So, but we also were doing that for another reason. It is just not enough people out there. So in that realm, and this may be something that doesn't benefit us, but you know, you always want your legacy to go past the graveyard, is we are spending a lot of times at schools, both in universities, getting them prepared for coming out and being in the construction business and with all the challenges that come with it. And as they tell me, Mr. Canty, no one ever talks about this. It's not stuff it's not an academic stuff that they can learn. All the way down to your first, second, and third graders. I just spoke to a school in Landover a few weeks back during Black History Month about those things. Growing your workforce is more than having a career fair out of college. By that time, they've already decided what they want to do. You got to get to these young people early. You got to get to them early, and a lot of them are dying to hear it. They're waiting to hear it. It's just the hardest questions I get are actually from the second graders. They're the hardest questions I get. Yeah. So I that's one of the ways we're getting this. A few ways we're getting prepared.
And I'll jump in here real quick, Scott. I mean, on one hand, the amount of economic opportunity as an individual within our industry is enormous right now. I mean, there is so much competition getting ready for this kind of work. People are trading jobs, moving to other jobs, re-leveraging their jobs a lot. Us at Bravo, we are constantly out on LinkedIn and constantly out looking for people. to fill these CM jobs, the lighting jobs. So I think that what we're seeing is that with the breadth of expenditure, there are companies that are hiring, and some of these are the big ones, are hiring a lot of people, which is great. But we also have to ask ourselves, who are they hiring? When are they hiring them? And what are their long-term opportunities? And how do you create an expectation, in second grade's a little early, but, in high school, for people to see this world and this business as a place to make a living, it's a place to raise a family. And the tough thing is that it's construction, it's dirty, it's sweaty, it's hard, it's big. I mean, it's not like, being on a computer and pretending you're going to be a Google tech. So getting people to understand the opportunity, where it can be financially for them in a living wage, or more than a living wage, and raise a family. I think institutionally, that's a long-term educational question. But right now, if there's anybody out there who's looking for work who is an A&E professional and you're in the New York, New Jersey region, get in touch with me because we're hiring.
I think that's same with most, right? Everybody's hiring and everybody's fighting over resources.
Yes.
Look, we're beginning to get down to the end. So I want to make sure I give you guys an opportunity to kind of give your final thoughts and your recommendations, advice and counsel to those who've attended today. And any of your final thoughts. Chris, I'll start with you.
Well, again, I might have been a little pessimistic today. If we don't get this one right, if we don't really, really take the Biden vision for why he was elected president, why we passed $1 trillion bill, the purpose of minority empowerment, if we don't get this right, I don't know when we're going to get it right. So mine is a clarion call to, we saw what happened when Obama got ambushed with his infrastructure. We cannot let the Biden infrastructure get co-opted, get diffused, losing it for its impact on a local level. We cannot get this one wrong, and we're going to require a lot of hard work and effort. But on the other hand, $1 trillion, we're talking real money. Let's make sure it gets in the right places.
Man, I think you're right, Chris. We gotta figure it out. Take the, and I gotta take I can't be political in my role on this one, but I appreciate everything that you said. I'll just do it that way.
Leave it that way. Thank you. Keep me out of trouble, Scott.
Yeah, I was staying out of trouble, but I do appreciate what you said.
Sure.
Ken, your thoughts, your final thoughts, and
Yeah.
advice and counsel.
Three thoughts and advice and counsel rolled up into 3 statements. First, for the big companies, the majority of the problems that result, Chris had talked about compliance and overseers. A lot of this stuff is avoidable just by keeping your eye on your projects and listening to those businesses who are calling you with issues. Most of these problems can be handled with a phone call and a visit, and things can get resolved so that you don't even need maybe the oversight. Things start to take care of themselves. What a world that would be. Second, to the minority businesses and the small businesses, make sure you have a support, particularly to your CEOs, make sure you have a support system. Whatever that support system is, do not think you can do this by yourself, because no one does it by themselves. Doesn't matter. I'm sure Chris Ward is somebody I've known for years. I still remember the first day I met him in New York at another company. I'm sure, Chris, there's people you call when you need help and advice for things that you need to talk to, just to work things out your mind. So have that support system. The third thing is, and this is to the big companies and the small companies, have a code. Every man and woman should have a code. Whatever that code is, just have a code and live by it. That's it.
Thanks. Great.
Let me do this because I've had a couple questions. You guys have been great panelists and guests today. People want to know how to reach you. So Chris, you want to share your contact information?
Yeah, I'm easy to find. It's capital C, Chris O. Ward 54@gmail.com. Email me anytime. I always get back to people.
All right, I love it. chrisoward54@gmail.com. And
I know,
Ken,
I know,
how do
I
you-
know Scott, that dates me because that's my year of birth. But that's what 5/4 is.
Chris, I wasn't gonna put you out there that way, but I
Oh,
got
you
it.
were, you were.
And Ken, how should people reach you? Uh-oh, you're on mute, Ken.
Sorry about that. K Canty, Kilo Charlie Alpha November Tango Yankee, K Canty at janusmaterials.com. And I put that in the chat.
Thank you, Ken. So, man, you guys have been great. This conversation has been wonderful. I think this is a conversation that will continue for us. My sense is that we have a role at the Minority Business Development Agency's Advanced Manufacturing Center, but there will also be a role for the MiHUB co-op to take some of this on as the cooperative and bring people together, particularly on that monitoring. I really like that idea. We've taken it down and we're going to move forward with that.
Cool.
I want to say to everyone that has participated today, a couple of other little nuggets that I want to share. And the first is that as part of the MBDA network and being operated by the city of Baltimore, we're really fortunate to have some funds available to provide deeper technical assistance as part of the CARES Act. That program is still open and the funds are still available. Those funds do not come directly to you. So I don't want anybody thinking we're about to give out grants. It's not how we work, but we will provide technical assistance on issues that you may have that will help you to rebound from what we've been dealing with for the last 24 months, or to chart a new course based on what we've been dealing with for the last 24 months. And so that is the CARES Act fund. And you can find out more about that through the Mayor's Office of Small Minority and Women Business at 410-396-3818. I will remind people that they are not bound by city limits. So you can be in the Baltimore metropolitan area and still take advantage of the CARES Act technical assistance grants. Also, we talked earlier about the MiHUB co-op, and Mark did a great job of kind of giving you some background on the co-op. We're inviting people to come in and participate in the co-op, and you can find out more by going to mihubcoop.com. That's MIHUBCOOP.com. And you can always learn more about MBDA and what we're doing at the Advanced Manufacturing Center by visiting our website, and that is www.baltimoremBDA.com. My name is Scott Phillips, and I am Director of the Mid-Atlantic Region MBDA Advanced Manufacturing Center. And as always, we invite you back next month for MiHUB Monday. Thank you again, Chris. Thank you, Ken. I want to thank the entire staff of the MBDA Advanced Manufacturing Center for pulling these things together. Anthony Robinson, Uchenna, Mildred Uday, Reginald Mack, thank you all. And we look forward to hearing from you. If this session was good for you,
Great.
we appreciate it. And if there are questions that you didn't get answered, we're still going to try to reach out and answer your questions. So thank you all very much.
Cheers. Bye.
Till next time. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.